Hi everyone, it's Alice, and today we are gonna do a winter TBR because it is in fact winter. At least it's winter where I am. It is very cold, very dark, very snowy, and kind of weirdly foggy today, which is a lot, but it's very atmospheric and it's perfect weather to stay inside and read. Anyways, I'm assuming you didn't come here for a weather report. You came for the books. And I have a stack of books I'd like to show you. I've just perused my shelves, picked out what is most intriguing to me right now, and looking at it, it is quite the mix. It's a little bit of everything, which makes sense because I like to read a little bit of everything. Let's start off with a couple of translated books. The first one that I have is one that I was given as a gift from a friend. It's Fresh Water for Flowers by Valérie Perrin. I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce this last name. The author is French, so I'm sure I'm not saying it right. But this sounds really, really good. It's about this woman who is a caretaker at a cemetery, and she has like a daily routine. Her life is like very much this routine. She sees the same people every day. She does the same things. And then this routine is disturbed because this man comes to the cemetery with his mother's ashes and insists on placing them on like a stranger's grave. Why? I have no idea, but that sounds like an interesting premise. This is a book that I've seen make the rounds in Norway. It also has a Norwegian translation, and when it came out, it was everywhere. I kept seeing it in bookshops, and I was intrigued, but I never picked it up, so I'm happy that I got it as a gift because now I get to read it. And I'm just intrigued by this woman who works in the cemetery. Like, that's what intrigues me the most about this story. I do think it has a little bit of a romance element as well, but it seems like it's mostly about these people and it's kind of like character driven. I also really like that it's translated from French because I love reading books in translation. The only thing about this is that it is a little bit of a longer one, which I find a little bit intimidating, but I feel like at the right time, this book is gonna be amazing. Secondly, we have a book that I've had on a couple of TBRs now, but I still haven't read. It's The Decagon House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji, and this is translated from Japanese. The story follows a group of university students who are a part of this like murder mystery club, and they decide to go to this island, which is the scene of this grisly murder. And on this island, while they're there, they start getting killed off one by one, which is unnerving. I think this first came out in the 80s, which is cool. And one of the reasons that I'm really intrigued by it is that the premise is reminiscent of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which is one of my favorite mystery novels. And I'm wondering if I will like really like this because I like that, but I don't know if the style is very different. But I'm very intrigued. It's also not that long, so it shouldn't take me too long to read. This does also have a couple of maps in it, which I think is really cool. It's like actually in the middle of the book. So we have what I'm assuming is a map of the island, but then there's also the map of a house, which is a cool little detail. I'm even more intrigued now, and I think there's more in the back here, but I'm not going to look at it in case there are spoilers. Then we have another mystery, but I think this one veers a little bit more into that like thrillery, horror-y type vibe. It's Near the Bone by Christina Henry, and this follows what I think is a little bit of a younger girl who lives alone with this man in the mountains, and it says that she doesn't remember a time before she lived with him in this mountain, which is a little bit creepy. And it says on the back here that she must never make him upset or angry. And then I think what happens is that they are like all alone up there usually, but then these people arrive. I think there are like 3 people, and this obviously freaks this guy out, and our main character is really worried because she's worried about him getting upset because horrible things happen when he's upset. Obviously that sounds pretty horrific, and I have an idea as to maybe what's going on, but then maybe it's a little bit too obvious. I don't really know, but I'm intrigued, and I'm really wondering how scary this is gonna get and how creepy. But I'm hoping that this is gonna have like a chilling atmosphere, and I'm assuming it's set at least partially in winter, which just based on the cover. Another one that I've got that has a wintry cover is Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips, which is set in this small community in Siberia where I think 2 girls go missing. And I think that the book is not so much about the mystery around that, but it's more about how this disappearance affects the women in this little community, which sounds very interesting. It sounds kind of like character driven, and I'm assuming this is going to be a little bit on the slower side and just focus on characters, which I'm very much into. It also mentions on the back here like rugged beauty of like open expanses of tundra, soaring volcanoes, dense forests. Like the setting sounds really good and it just sounds perfect for winter. Then we have another one that is set on an island. It's The Wild Hunt by Emma Seckel. And the thing with this is that this is maybe more of like an autumnal read because it's set during October. But I have a lot of books that I kind of want to read in October and I'm never going to get to all of them. And I just feel like this would probably be fine to just read whenever. I feel like you can sort of read autumnal books in winter as well. I mean, you can read whatever you want at any time. But I really like reading books sort of with the seasons. But this sounds really dark, so I feel like it could be good for winter as well. The story is set on an island in Scotland, and it says that the islanders have 3 rules. Don't stick your nose where it's not wanted, don't mention the war, and never let your guard down during October. And I think the story sort of revolves around these 2 people who are brought together because this boy disappears. But there seems to be like other stuff going on as well, because it says something about these like bird-like creatures carrying the souls of the dead. I don't really know what that means. I don't know if this veers into like magical realism. I have no idea, but it sounds really good and the setting sounds excellent and sounds a little dark, but I'm up for it. Another quite dark sounding book that I have is The Things We Do to Our Friends by Heather Darwent. And this is also set in Scotland and it also has like a dark mystery thriller vibe. I'm noticing a theme in this TBR. There's a lot of like darker mystery-ish type books, but I love reading these kinds of books when it's dark outside, and I also just love reading them in general, so it makes sense. This one follows a woman who has left her old life behind and she's like reinventing herself when she goes to university in Scotland, and it seems like she has some secrets and some stuff that she's trying to get away from. And she meets this other girl who's like rich and beautiful, and she's a part of this exclusive friend group, and she brings our main character into that friend group. And that's like a totally different kind of life than our main character is used to. So we've got that going on, and then I think this friend group, like there's a lot of darkness there, and they are like capable of things that our main character didn't really expect, and maybe some things that has something to do with her past. I don't really know, but it sounds very intriguing. And I love books about like friend groups and that clash between the rich and those with less. I think that's a very interesting like vibe, so I'm intrigued. Next we have a book that I think is maybe a little bit not necessarily lighter, but not as dark, although I think that this could be quite sad. It's The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, and this is contemporary fiction. It follows a boy who loses his father, and in his grief he sort of starts hearing the voices of objects, which is a problem in and of itself, but then his mother develops a hoarding problem, and their home becomes very, very loud for this poor boy. He eventually finds refuge in the library though, where all of the objects are very polite and they whisper, and I just think that sounds lovely, and I'm very intrigued as to how this like voice thing is going to be like in the book when we read about it, like the voices that he hears. But I'm assuming this is a book about like grief and life and just this boy. It sounds very nice, but also I just feel like it's gonna be quite sad. Then we've got a couple of historical fiction books. The first one is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner, which starts off in 1791 in a dark London alley, and we meet this apothecary who sells poisons to women who want to liberate themselves from the horrible men in their lives, which is quite the setup. I do think this is one of those books where we have a historical perspective but also a contemporary perspective, and I'm assuming the contemporary perspective like investigates whatever happened to this apothecary or something, which is cool. I usually tend to lean more towards like the historical fiction perspectives in those kinds of books, but I'm intrigued to see what this is going to be like. I'm very excited to meet this apothecary because she sounds like an interesting woman. I've also got The Hexologists by Josiah Bancroft, and in here we meet these two hexologists who uses like magic and hexes, I think, to solve all of these kinds of mysteries, and there seems to be like a magical component to the mysteries that they solve. And the case in here is about them being approached by the secretary of the king, and he wants them to help the king because the king is desperate to be baked into a cake, which is interesting. I'm assuming there's more going on than just the king and the cake though, because it says that these people find themselves in like this mystery and they find these secrets, they can like upend the nation, which sounds like quite the adventure. It also mentions like alchemists, ghouls, and anti-royalist gangs that are kind of violent, and also a bookish dragon which only occasionally eats people, and it just sounds like a good time. Lastly, we have the second book in a trilogy that I'm reading. It's Adulthood Rites by Octavia E. Butler, and I read the first book, Dawn, earlier this year, I think. I'm pretty sure it was this year, and it was really creepy, but it kind of ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger in a way, and I want to know what happens. The story in the first book, though, follows a woman who is awakened on a spaceship, and she and a bunch of other people have been taken in by these aliens who came to Earth, and Earth was like in the middle of a horrible war and it destroyed the entire planet, and I guess it didn't destroy it, but people couldn't live there anymore. So the aliens took these people in to save humanity, and they've kept them there asleep for a really long time while they've been fixing Earth. And now they want to reintroduce these people to Earth for the low, low price of wanting to mate with them. And I cannot tell you like how creeped out I was by the first book. Like, it was really, really disturbing. And the more I think about it, the more disturbed I am. So it's really creepy. Like, I remember I reviewed that book and some people said that they couldn't even finish it because they just found it so disturbing, which I totally understand. But I really want to know what happens next. I love Octavia E. Butler's writing. I think she writes so well. I am nervous about this though. Like, I'm excited, but I'm also very nervous because I think it's gonna be even worse than this one. That was the last book though. I feel like I've made a pretty solid TBR. We'll see if I'm gonna be able to stick to it because I am a little bit of like a mood reader, so you never really know, but hopefully I'll be able to read at least some of these during winter. Now, I'd love to know if you have made a winter TBR yet and what books are on it, and as always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!